35 years ago, audiences were introduced to a salty murderous doll, a child's toy with the consciousness of a very pissed-off serial killer trapped within it. Since the release of Child's Play on November 9, 1988, Chucky, whose full name, Charles Lee Ray, is derived from the names of notorious killers Charles Manson, Lee Harvey Oswald, assassin of John F. Kennedy, and James Earl Ray, assassin of Martin Luther King, has spawned a franchise that includes several movies, a TV show, and more merchandise than you can imagine. What started as a script by Don Mancini called Blood Buddy, about a doll that came with a pin so that you could become its blood buddy, turned into a tale about a struggling mother, Catherine Hicks, unknowingly gifting her son, Alex Vincent, a good guy doll that a killer, Brad Dourif, on the verge of death used voodoo to transfer his soul into. When producer David Kirschner joined the project, inspired by a lifelong fear of dolls that started with an episode of The Twilight Zone, he made some changes to the Blood Buddy script before John Lafia did a rewrite and Tom Holland signed on to direct. And they were off and running on the start of the hugely popular franchise. Collider recently got the opportunity to chat one with Kirschner, who has also produced the Hocus Pocus films, about the evolution of Chucky. From that first script and his original drawings of what the doll should look like to everything that's come since. During the interview, he shared stories about his journey from an American Tail to a killer doll, getting Child's Play greenlit, how he never even thought about a sequel, let alone everything that's come since the first film's release, balancing the beauty and laughter of life with the horror that exists, how the first big reveal of Chucky came about, the fine-tuning the film went through prior to its release, how Dourif ultimately came to voice the sarcastic doll, and all the wild merchandise that's available. David Kirschner. Both of those. For a little backstory, the reason I did Chucky in the first place, my wife and I had been in London and I bought a book called The Dollhouse Murders that I still have in my office. When I was a kid, I watched an episode of The Twilight Zone with my big sister and my big cousin called Talkie Tina, and it starred Telly Savalas. It was so scary to me. I was always frightened of my sister's dolls, but the truth is, I was frightened of everything. I loved watching all the scary stuff during the day, and by night, not only would I pay the price, but my family would as well because every light had to be on in the house and I would have 12 blankets over me in the San Fernando Valley without air conditioning in the 60s. I don't know why, I just loved it. The whole doll thing and clown thing falls into the same weird category for me. I came back, and I gave my development person this book and said, I would love to do something with a doll. She said, well, there was a screenplay that went out about 6 months ago, called Blood Buddy. I said, oh, I'd like to read it. She said, well, everybody passed on it. And I said, I'm just so curious to see what somebody did with a doll story in a more contemporary form. She gave it to me and I really liked an awful lot of it. There were parts of it that did not work at all. In Don Mancini's original script, the doll was made with a red watery substance and it came with a pin, so that you could become a blood buddy with this doll. It didn't make sense to me that any toy company would put a needle in, and you could prick not only your doll's skin, but more importantly, your own skin. For me, I always needed a Frankenstein moment. What is the thing that brings the creature to life? So, I had come up with the idea of this lakeshore strangler who's on the run and takes refuge in a toy store, and then he transfers his body into the doll. Tom Holland, our director, came up with the notion of voodoo, which made it easier for the audience to understand, almost like Catholicism. It's not that any of it really makes sense to us, but there are all these things that people have been indoctrinated with from the time they were little, and religion fascinates me. Guillermo del Toro speaks of it so well. He said that so much of his childhood was filled with dead bodies on the street, growing up during Civil War. It just fascinated him, the idea of Catholicism, which he practices, and death. In all his work, he has tapped into something like that.